So I want to just tell our parents and community and anyone joining us tonight that at the end of this presentation, you will have the opportunity to digitally respond with your impressions, your thoughts, your ideas. We want to collect as much data as we can from our community as we go through phase 2, which is really a legacy project. This project is going to change the face of our community and our schools for the next 75 to 100 years. And so we want to make sure we get things right. So tonight we're doing a digital presentation where we can record it, post it on our website. And we plan to do, using Sign Up Genius, some more in-person meetings. The Delta virus is declining. It's been hard to engage in person. And we want to get back out there and meet with different groups of people, our senior center, some of our preschools, parents in our community. So we'll be doing that very, very soon. But tonight is just sort of showing you where we are to date and things in this plan for phase 2 change from day to day. So I want to introduce our team that's been working very hard on this project. And so Jill Elliott is with us tonight. She has done an excellent job making sure that we stay true to our vision, our mission, and beliefs as we design our additions to our elementary schools, middle schools, and high school. Scott Lofton is just coming off leading an effort to build a new Lincoln Elementary. We learned a lot from this process, and it's really helping us with phase 2. And so Scott is here tonight. We also have Aaron Winter, who's been instrumental in many of our facilities project, and he is with us tonight. He manages projects in our business office. Our special education director, Sue Wigging, has been an integral part of our planning process. And then Kristen Groves and Kathy Earhart at Blacklick and High Point, respectively. They've been deeply engaged with the design team, parents, teachers in their building to make sure that as we do the additions to our elementary schools, they're exactly what we need, that they're going to look great, and they're going to be flexible spaces that we can count on for years to come. By the same token, Brad Barboza at Middle School East, Robin Murdoch at Middle School South, and Steve Tart at Middle School West, they've been leading this effort with our design team, and we're very grateful for their efforts. And then Jessica Williams has a gargantuan task of meeting with departments and our design team, meeting in executive meetings every single Friday to make sure that our programming matches what we need exactly, and that we can afford, kind of separating our wants from our needs. And Jessica has worked very, very closely with her teachers, and it's been an exciting process. So we'll go next to the next slide just to introduce the folks on our design and construction team. So the DLR group has been working with us for the last 6 or so months, and we have Peter Leahy here tonight. He's going to talk to us about the middle schools. We have Paul Lawton. He's going to work with us talking about the high school project. And Claire Lonsberry is going to go through our elementary projects. And also our project manager, she's kind of the glue that holds us all together, is Jennifer Davey is here as well. So thank you for joining us. And Tony Shore from Shore Architects Incorporated out of Dublin. He's our local partner, and Tony is here with us tonight. And we have Frank Pinsati from Rasili Construction here with us tonight. He's going to talk about safety and what Rasili does to ensure that we manage dust, that we manage safety if there's construction workers on site, that they're properly vetted, all of those things if we have subcontractors. And so glad to have Frank with us here tonight. And I think I captured everybody on our design and construction team. I want to also mention Jessica Williams is here with us in the Zoom. Jill Elliott is, and we also have Mark Ogden. Mark is our owner's rep from Turner Construction, and he is the driving force in really helping us look at what we need versus what we may want so that we can stay in budget. He has a lot of practical advice, and Mark has been instrumental in helping us learn the process of building a big building like our high school. And so thanks for being here tonight, Mark. And let's see, Catherine Hope Cunningham is also here with us tonight. Catherine sits on our Master Facilities Committee, and she was instrumental in helping us design phase 1 and phase 2, and is very passionate about these projects. So thanks for joining us tonight, Catherine. We'll go to the next slide. So this is a document that you may have seen, you may be familiar with. We used it in the coffees when we met in living rooms across the district over the last 3 years. And so we approved a bond issue and operating levy in May of 2018. And that included building the new Lincoln Elementary, a tremendous building we're very proud of, 82,000 square feet, 30 classrooms, 5 classrooms for grade level. It will eventually house 750 students. There's just over 700 there today. And it's helping us stem the tide of the growth. We're burgeoning at the seams in all of our elementaries, and we were able to redistrict and populate Lincoln with new families. And a big shout out to Claire Giardino for leading that effort. We were very conscious of the fact that she's our principal at Lincoln, very conscious of the fact that as we built a new school and welcomed new families who weren't together before, we're very conscious of we were building a new school community, not just a new school. And so Claire has met with families in neighborhoods. We've had pizza parties and all kinds of things happening on the playground at Lincoln. And we've taken over 1,000 people through the building. And many of the people we've taken through have already raised their kids in Gahanna, and they were very interested and very impressed with the project. So that was a nice thing to see. Also part of phase 1 is we renovated K-8 classrooms with new LED lighting, flooring, furniture. We did that across the district. We have yet to do the flooring projects at High Point and Blacklick. That'll be part of phase 2, because as we do the addition, we want to make sure the flooring matches. And so the other part was we did community engagement around a solution to address our high school needs. Parts of our high school are over 100 years old. We know that parts of it are falling apart. It's an old friend. It's been a great building, but it's really seen its day. And we're ready and poised and excited to replace it while still paying homage to the rich history and past. When you walk through our high school, you see graduating classes of 25, 30 people from 1920. It's such a cool history. And so we'll make sure that we pay homage to that and maintain our allegiance to that as we build a 21st century high school. And so we also, what drove a lot of the data for this work was an enrollment study that we worked with a firm out of Hilliard called Cooperative Strategies. And they showed us that at our peak, I think it's in 2038, 39, we're going to reach a pinnacle enrollment of 9,200 kids. And we will have about 2,800 kids at our high school. And so we need to plan and prepare for that now. We have new families moving into our district, it seems like daily. And some of the projects and the development out in Jefferson Township have actually finished early. So our growth has accelerated even a little more quickly than we thought it would. Like the farms at Jefferson was one development that finished early. So right now, Blacklick and High Point are burgeoning at the seams. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We can go to the next slide. So then in November of 2020, our community gave us permission to do this work we're talking about tonight. So for Blacklick, High Point, our 3 middle schools and the high school, we're so grateful for that permission. We met and we talked about our needs. Catherine actually is on this Zoom tonight, and she actually did a Facebook Live where she went through the high school and showed pictures of our boiler room and places that have seen better days. And so our community supported our plan, and we have a lot of gratitude for that. So if you're out there and you know, if you voted for it or you didn't vote for it, we owe you the good stewardship of your tax dollars and making sure that we use every dollar to build as much space and to make it as innovative and flexible and inspiring to students and teachers as we can. We'll go to the next slide. So project one is Blacklick and High Point Elementary School. And so what we looked at our enrollment study, and you know, we want to make sure that what we do, the decisions we make, are made with data. And so we are going to make it much like Lincoln Elementary, both these schools, High Point and Blacklick, 5 sections for grade level. And we want to make a kindergarten wing where we have spacious classroom. Kindergarten is the start of everyone's learning journey. You know, it's amazing. You know, I think teaching is the only profession that you get acclimated to it and onboarded to it when you're 5. And so that learning experience in kindergarten is so important, and having a little bit better, bigger classroom is extremely important. So there can be centers and lots of playtime for kids so that they can learn to socialize with one another. And so we're very passionate about that. We wanted to include flexible small group spaces for supplemental support, increased storage for classroom materials and custodial supplies, expanded cafeteria seating. Both Blacklick and High Point have smaller cafeterias. They're crowded now, so we got to make sure we make room for the new families coming in, and so we have to expand those. We're going to add restrooms, a new gymnasium, additional art and music spaces with current gym renovation, and a dedicated smart lab. We're really dedicated to students' emotional needs in our smart labs. When students today are having a difficult moment in the classroom, we want to give them some space, give them some time to recenter, and that's what our smart labs do. And we really intentionally built smart labs into our new elementary, and we're doing that with both Blacklick and High Point, and increased parking at both. Parking has been a challenge at both Blacklick and High Point over the years. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And so Claire Lonsberry from DLR Architects is here tonight, and she's going to walk us through the Blacklick Elementary schematic program plan.
Thanks so much. Just making sure you can hear me all right. I had to switch my audio over. All right, so this is the Blacklick Elementary School plan. The High Point is very similar, so I'll go into more detail on this one. So as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, we have a classroom addition. That's where we're adding those enlarged K classrooms, 5 kindergarten classrooms. We also have 5 first grade classrooms in that wing, as well as some of those additional education spaces dispersed throughout that wing, the OTPT and some general intervention courses, so that we can continue to disperse those services throughout the building amongst the different grade levels. As part of that classroom wing, like Steve mentioned, we do have a flex space. So down by those K-level classrooms, yep, in the corridor, we have a larger space there for just a different learning environment, for opportunities for teachers to be able to use that space for small group breakout classes, also potentially doing some arts, music, those sort of things, bringing that from the art and music spaces on the other side of the building into that K and 1 wing, where we have those smaller students. So they don't have to travel all the way to the other side of the building for those. But also just to be able to diversify the types of learning spaces and working spaces and collaboration spaces that these students have. So that's the classroom wing addition for the elementary school. We also have a gymnasium addition, as you can see on the top right. So this addition was actually inspired by the need to have an additional art and music classroom, as well as some more learning spaces in that smart lab. And so we found that it'd be the best adjacency to have those new art and music classrooms adjacent to the existing, which is actually where the existing gymnasium is in those buildings. I apologize, with child here. And so, one second. I'm so sorry about that. We decided then we needed to have an additional gymnasium. Sorry, I really apologize for that. We had to do a gymnasium addition to allow us to use that existing gym for those new spaces. So that's why we have the gym. Also, the gymnasium addition is larger because we need to accommodate so many more students. We're probably going to have a couple of gym classes happening. And then also an expanded cafeteria flex space in between there. So to expand that cafeteria space, we found an opportunity to use a multi-purpose connection between the cafeteria and gym. So that's generally the additions and renovations happening in the Blacklick building. We have some administrative renovation as well happening down where the clinic is, down in the bottom middle, correct. Just have some additional needs with the growth in enrollment and the growth in staffing for an additional admin renovation. So if we could change the slide. Just to give an idea of what these additions look like, we have this is the view of the existing building, and then this is the classroom addition on Blacklick. So you'll just see that we're doing some matching the brick of the existing Blacklick building on most of that addition, but we are bringing in a darker brick color to transition between the existing to the new wing. We also have some colored metal panel at the entrance there that you'll see. And that shows up in other parts of the building as well, on the gym addition as well. So the next slide, please. This is the gym addition. So this is a larger form on the end of the building. We have the metal panel from the existing roof. We're gonna match that and have the metal panel wrap this large gym. And then we also have the colored panel at the canopy at the addition, and then the matched brick as well. So the High Point addition is very similar. As you see, we also have the classroom addition and we've got the gymnasium addition. There's a little bit of variation here with the classroom addition. It's a little bit smaller in that it has a fewer classrooms, but that's also because High Point had a couple additional classrooms from a previous addition. But otherwise, the programming is the same. The K and 1 classrooms are in that classroom addition. And then we've also got that art room and music room adjacency and the smart lab and OTPT in that area, with the gym addition being pretty much the same between both. A very similar look when it comes to the classroom addition. We've got a light colored brick transition between the existing and the new. The existing building at High Point has a varied brick tone, and so we are going to try to duplicate that in the rest of the building, but we are bringing that lighter tone brick into that that one portion here in the front, as well as some colored panel tile, as you can see the red variation there. And then similarly, we're going to match the existing metal panel roof color, and we'll wrap the new gym addition that way. And we have the colored metal panel tile. And then we also have that existing varied brick color. And that is the summary of the elementary school additions. Thank you for bearing with my additional guest.
That's okay. Thanks very much, Claire. We appreciate it. And so I want to talk a minute about the timeline for both Blacklick and High Point. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is the need for our classroom wing as quickly as possible. And so right now, there are lots of supply chain issues with structural steel. And so this timeline is going to be split up a bit. We're going to begin construction in the next few weeks on both Blacklick and High Point. That's on the academic wing. And those classrooms will be done by August of 22. And then the related arts and cafeteria additions will begin a little bit later, but still in the fall of 21. And the estimated completion date would be December or maybe a little later of 22. It may go out into the spring. We're still working with that timeline. The problem is the structural steel that wasn't getting made during the pandemic. Now Amazon and Facebook and anybody building a large project with a roof, anything like a gymnasium, there is a 10 to 14 month queue on ordering structural steel. So we can build the classroom wings without structural steel, but we can't do the larger spaces without it. And so we're getting our orders in for this so that they can be ready, and that will determine the timeline. But the goal would be to finish the related arts and cafeteria additions before the end of the school year, and hopefully very well into or not too far into 23. It's important to note too that we're not just building new gymnasiums at both Blacklick and High Point. Remember, we're going to have 225 more students, so potentially 725, 750 students at each of these schools. So we need to have a big gymnasium space. But what our design team was able to do creatively is repurpose the current gymnasiums to put classroom spaces in, and that's really gonna help us expand our gymnasiums as separate kind of spaces. And so we're really excited about that. I think it'll be good for our community, our Pee Wee basketball teams. They'll have bright, new, shiny spaces to practice in. You know, if you've been to Lincoln, you can see the new gym, and that's the kind of effect we're looking for. So the related arts will take us a little longer, and it's really a supply chain issue. The classroom renovations to existing classrooms, we still have flooring projects to do at both Blacklick and High Point. We did them to our other elementaries, and we thought it was prudent to wait to do those as we're building these additions. And so the estimated completion date for that is August of 22, and we would start in May of 22. And we got to make sure the flooring matches with the new construction. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so project 2 is all 3 of our middle schools. And so we want to talk to you about where we are, what we heard from the community, what we looked at and needed from our enrollment study. And it hasn't really changed all that much. So the middle school plans include additional classroom spaces. We're adding about 175 students to each of our middle schools over time. And so that's 7 classrooms at Middle School East. Unlike Blacklick and High Point, all these buildings are very different. So they all have different designs, different nuances, different challenges. And our design team has worked hard to try to create equity across the board of all 3 middle schools, but then deal with the unique challenges of each. So at Middle School South, we'd add 10 classrooms, and then at Middle School West, 7 additional classrooms. We want to add flexible group spaces for supplemental support, expanded cafeteria seating, additional art and music classrooms, increased office space, and just needs specific to each school because they're all a little bit different. We could go to the next one. And so Peter Leahy is here with us tonight from DLR, and he's going to talk to us about the site plans for all 3 of our middle schools.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Leahy. I'm an architect with DLR Group. I've been working closely with the design team here on the design and additions at each of your middle schools. So, and one of the things I wanted to just sort of reiterate that Steve touched on was the idea of equity. That's been a driving factor for all of our projects with the middle schools, is creating an equal number of classroom spaces, creating an equal number of science labs, right-sizing music spaces, creating a number of art rooms, just trying to make sure that the students have a good experience regardless of which middle school they're attending. So an equal level of experience across the district. So we'll start with Middle School East here. As you can see, the new addition that we are adding is on the north end of the existing building. So that is closer to the current classroom wing. So we felt this would be a good location to add the additional classrooms. We're adding some special ed spaces in there, and we are adding some sort of common group gathering areas for the students all in this area. One of the things that's going to be really important about this as well is it's going to help open up some of the circulation inside the school, which is currently a bit of an issue. So we are trying to help alleviate that by creating sort of a circulation loop throughout the existing classroom, throughout the existing building. We're also looking at touching the media center and cafeteria. Like Steve mentioned, we're having an additional about approximately 175 students for each of these. So we need to add cafeteria space. We are looking at how the cafeteria and the media centers can be upgraded and updated to be more of a 21st century learning environment. Lastly, we just are adding a little bit of a fire access road on the east side there. So that will one of the current site conditions right now is that due to the track and athletic field being raised a little bit higher than the existing building, the area between the track and the building tends to become very wet and muddy. And so having some hard surface out there will really help the students, especially during fire drills. So, Middle School South. So here we are looking at adding a single story new addition to the southwest of the building. Likewise with Middle School East, this will contain classrooms. This has science labs, this has special ed and commons area. One of the kind of key features here that you'll see is that we are building this around the existing building and actually creating a bit of an interior courtyard. That's doing a couple of things. That is preserving daylight into the existing classrooms, which we felt is really important. But that is also creating, that is also helping to create sort of an outdoor classroom environment. So we are actively working with the design team on trying to develop ideas for what could be, what could go inside that and how we can best utilize that space. But we're excited about having this sort of unique classroom area. We are also adding a second addition on the north side. This is going to be more for music and storage, gymnasium storage. So it's just a small addition, but what this will allow us to do is make sure that your band, choir, and orchestra rooms at Middle School South are right-sized and appropriate for the teaching environments and programs required. Also, along with Middle School East and Middle School West, we are increasing the size of the cafeteria. We are touching the media centers, and then we are doing some light interior remodels to the administration office area to create a more secure entry. We'll go to the next one. And then lastly, we'll touch on Middle School West. So Middle School West is a little bit different than the other two in that the new addition here is actually the gymnasium addition. So we are building a new gymnasium with bleacher seating, locker rooms. This will have a larger auxiliary gymnasium, which can be used for for multiple classes and different sports. We will also have sort of more of a commons concessions areas for events. So this gymnasium can be used for potentially hosting tournaments, as well as a variety of activities. At the main entry, we are adding a secure vestibule. This was one of the bigger needs we've heard so far, is that the school currently does not have a secure entrance. So we are helping to create that by building a new vestibule. So visitors will be able to enter into the vestibule, but they will have to be vetted before they're actually allowed into the building itself. Lastly, our third addition is an expansion of the student dining area, and also pushing out a little bit of the student entry. So this is creating more space for not only dining, but also students to be during before and after school times. Then, as far as interior remodels, so one of the biggest pieces here is something you've heard with Blacklick and High Point, is that we are reusing the existing gymnasium, auxiliary gymnasium and locker rooms, and we've come up with a design to repurpose those for classrooms and special ed space. So that keeps them closer to the rest of the classrooms in the building, which makes it easier for students to get around. And then we were also lastly touching some more of the interior office administration areas as well. So those are the updates. Oh, and we are building a new fire access road around the new addition. One other point I should mention is that the new addition for the gymnasium is currently planned to be built on top of the existing tennis courts. Those tennis courts are going to be relocated and reconstructed as part of a larger site-wide sports complex project. But we are not losing the tennis courts as part of this project.
Thanks, Peter. We're excited about our middle school programming and plans. And, you know, when you think about Middle School West, they have been operating for years with what's essentially a elementary sized gymnasium, and they have a full middle school athletic program. So it's great that we can creatively repurpose the auxiliary gym and the current gym into classroom spaces, and then build a middle school gymnasium so that we can have competitions. I think it's going to be great for the kids at Middle School West. So each of our middle schools is a little bit different. The plan and timeline for the middle schools is to begin construction in the fall of 22 and complete it by August of 23. Again, we're going to be bringing in 175 students over the next number of years. And so it's really important that we get those done as quickly as possible. And what it's also going to do is right now there are log jams, especially at south and east and hallways. And so it's really important that we create these additions so the function and flow in the building is much more amenable for students and staff and teachers. We can go to the next slide. So the biggest project, obviously, is our high school project. We're going to build a 400,000 square foot plus building, and it is going to be a massive undertaking. And you can see our site. It's a very tight site, and we have to build as we're having school. And so that is going to be a very complex issue when you consider parking and getting contractors in and out of the site. So these plans are developing and they're very complex. And so what we're going to do tonight is show you a site plan. And we didn't have a lot of options with this. And so we want to walk you through the evolution of our thinking with our design team on the site plan. Before we do that, I want to talk about the community engagement we did in phase 1 around a high school solution. So we had meetings in person before the pandemic hit, and we've done surveys, and we've listened to the community, and we've heard some amazing things that is sort of our community's wish list. And we're going to visit that in a slide coming up here. Our student engagement, though, with our design team, DLR, kicked off in an outstanding way when we did a student shadowing project where each of us had a student that we shadowed for a whole day at different levels, so elementary, middle, or high school, and our design team and our administrators. Every 15 minutes with classrooms, we had a computer and we entered into a form what our students were doing at the time and what was happening in the classroom. And so we had a massive amount of data to just look at where learning currently is in our district. And it was cool. I had a student named Joseph. He was in second grade at Royal Manor, and it was delightful spending the day with him. The community engagement continues, and we're going to continue to talk, and we hope to get back out in person now that the Delta is waning a little bit. But we still have a massive amount of data from the engagement that we did and surveys that we've done. And then the engagement with staff, DLR's process is called BOLD. And so BOLD stands for Bridging Organizational Learning and Design. So DLR has a whole team dedicated to this. And it's our opportunity as we look at especially all of these spaces we're creating, but especially our high school, that we think about high school in a way that is future oriented, that we don't want to build a 1950s building in the 21st century. So this is our opportunity to think through things, to create a learner profile based on our vision, mission, and beliefs, and working with our teachers. We have drafts of a learner profile, an educator profile, and academic expectations. And so we're going to go out into the community and get feedback on the learner and educator profiles. And that'll be happening with our PTOs in the coming weeks. Our principals will be working with PTOs on that. And we'll be finalizing these guiding documents, and they will take shape and they will inform our design and really inform the kind of learning that we want to see as we move into these buildings. So as we're redesigning the spaces our children will be in, we also want to reimagine learning, and the BOLD work is helping us do that. And go to the next slide. And so these are the common themes we've heard in our face-to-face meetings and our student shadowing project and with our parents and our surveys. So resoundingly, we heard build one high school. We, at the beginning, had talk about building a second high school, maybe out in Jefferson Township, but it quickly became apparent that we could never create equity if we did that. We would have a brand new high school that some of our kids would be going to, and then we really wouldn't be able to kind of match it or even remotely match it with the current building because it's dilapidated and old. And so one high school was the resounding comment we heard from parents, making it large enough so the function and flow of the building work better. Our hallways right now are crowded. We don't have enough room for our students to all eat lunch. And so creating flexible learning spaces that allow for innovative teaching and learning. So these spaces will have extended collaborative areas and all kinds of things that will inspire a different kind of learning. We want to incorporate more vocational learning. So there'll be 2 additional spaces for CTE, career technical education. And so we will take our current programs that we already have from Eastland Fairfield, architecture, teaching professions, and bioscience, but we will add to those, we hope, another 2 programs. And our high school team is designing a survey. They're going to reach out to parents and staff along the lines of asking questions around CTE. And we want to get feedback, and we'll do some in-person thinking with the community around career and technical education. We know right now there are millions of jobs going unfilled, and we know college is really, really expensive. So do we develop thinking about going to school, but working as you go to school and having a company pay for it? It is what more and more I think students are doing. As the advent of the pandemic, they're taking a gap year and they're thinking about things and they're working. And so what will be left over from these very difficult 21 months, and how will that influence what college looks like, matriculating beyond high school? And so we want to have discussions about that. We want to integrate safety and security enhancements into our design. We've heard a lot about that. We heard a great deal about crossing the street to go to classes at Clark Hall. And so we want to bring our programs on this side of the street, on the site where the new high school will be. We want to have ample parking. Right now, parking has been a huge challenge for our students, and everybody who wants to drive and park to school can't do it right now. We want to have the ability to hold school while construction is occurring, and we want to create an enhanced performing arts wing for choir, theater, band, our music programs, all the arts, and then athletic spaces that include an athletic field house. We think, as I said before, that in a community like ours, where we have so many great athletic programs, rec programs, and so many kids involved in so many different sports, we think we will populate the field house, morning, noon, and night. And so that'll be a huge gift to our community and our athletics program. And then expanded cafeteria and auditorium space. So this is what we heard resoundingly from our community. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Paul Lawton. He is architect working on our high school plan with DLR, and he's going to walk us through the evolution of our thinking for situating the building on the high school site.
Thanks, Steve. Let me know that you can see our screen. Looks good. All right. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and thank you for your investment and interest in your school district and your community. It has been an exciting process thus far, and we kind of want to walk you through, as Steve said earlier, kind of where we are with the high school. So back in May and at the beginning of June, I would say we began to talk to the district and really start to investigate the high school site in order to identify priorities and dive a little bit deeper into the intricacies of scope, of schedule, and of constructability. We walked into the room really knowing two things for sure. Number one, that the existing elementary on the site would be demolished. And number two, that operations within the existing high school would have to go on while everything was being built. So we began to preliminarily size the building based upon kind of general square feet per student based upon your enrollment and projected enrollment to really start to test fit the site based upon those numbers.
Hey, Paul,
and so as you
could I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't think you're in presentation mode. You may want to hit that button. So
oh, sure. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. Thank you.
All right. So as you can see, upon doing so, we began to kind of initially rough out the loose design off of previous projects. And so really kind of putting in the big pieces, if you will, of what a new building could look like. Now, again, I stress the fact that this is extremely preliminary. And so this was not at all the final design and will not be. But what it did was it gave us a rough starting point of how the pieces could align and be on site. And so what we looked at was a school that was roughly about 450,000 square feet to 470,000 square feet. And it immediately became clear that the site was extremely tight. Again, this was our first dive into the size of the building with all of its pieces. And so what you see represented on the screen here is a school with 5 academic wings, roughly 2 stories each to the east, kind of facing that residential neighborhood, the gymnasium and auditorium to the west next to the football field, and a central circulation spine kind of running north and south down the middle of the building that would run from the main entrance that we planned originally to be at the north down to the field house to the south. So we began to think about the site for circulation, for parent drop-off, for bus drop-off, and emergency access as well. And all of these considerations really coincided with constructability, with the phasing and other logistics that would be necessary from a schedule, budget, and operations standpoint. So all of these discussions, it was a good day, good couple of days. All of these discussions really added to the list of challenges and opportunities that we identified on the site. This option here did a couple things. First of all, it did stay clear of the existing high school, which we knew we had to do. So that was a plus. And at the time, as we were considering the phased construction to move in, there seemed to be some opportunity that it provided. I would say, however, from a constructability standpoint, it offered some real challenges with material deliveries, access to the building perimeter. I know some of the hoisting of materials was a concern, and really just overall productivity and efficiency of the process. So as we began to consider this initial option, some logistical concerns arose as well. First, about the vehicular flow. The circulation was really limited due to the space, as well as the lack of visual clarity upon the building. So, and upon the approach. So as you were driving up to the building, it wasn't really clear, we felt, where you were going. Space for bus stacking and parking was also a concern, and also kind of identified as a minus of the scheme. We also considered pedestrian flow, and I think we certainly identified this as a challenge too, because the majority of the student parking was going to be off to the west of the football field, as you see. And I think that it offered some logistical issues from a day-to-day process of just simply getting the kids in the building from such a large distance. So lastly, safety was part of the discussion, and because of the limited view from the street, we really felt that it hindered kind of the implied observation that makes a school building safe. You know, when you look at the site and you have the corner off to the northwest, obviously a very busy corner of the community, you know, there's a lot of eyes, and those eyes kind of offer some accountability for anyone entering and approaching the building. So again, because of the placement of the football field, we felt that this wasn't ideal. And I think one of the major deterrents of illegal behavior is obviously that visibility. On the next slide here, you can kind of see one of our final considerations, and that's really the aesthetic presentation of the building and the challenges, especially from a legacy standpoint, right? We understand that this building is going to serve, you know, 2,800 students at any given time. And so you multiply that over, you know, the expected lifespan of a high school, let's say 50 to 100 years, and you're going to have a lot of history in this building. And so we wanted something that had a great first impression, if you will. You know, the high school would be, in this particular scheme, the first impression would be the football stadium. And as we discussed dressing up the stadium and some of the costs associated with that, it continued to really compromise this option. I think in the end, the aesthetic concerns only added to all of those logistical concerns that I mentioned before. And so what it did was it began to really send us back to the drawing board, right? And so we took another look at the site, and we realized that obviously we were landlocked, somewhat zero lot line situation. And like before, we knew that the elementary would have to be demoed, and classes would have to continue in the existing building. But I think the epiphany came when we considered moving the existing football field. Obviously it's large, and it's a big piece and necessary to the site, but we thought, if it's not working against if it wasn't working against us, what if it was flexible and could work for us? And so we investigated that thought, and this was the first look at what we thought it could do for us. The existing school could obviously still remain. You see that on the west side, and like before, it did as well. But having the field as a flexible, large piece of the pie, instead of a fixed piece, cleared up some things from a site access standpoint, from constructability, from staging, and even from a phasing standpoint within the existing building. We also looked at the hoisting of materials, right? And some of the problems that we had in the initial scheme were alleviated by moving the high school. Logistically, it solved some of the other layout challenges. First, it moved the school closer to the inevitable parking lot, creating better flow for the students on a day-to-day standpoint, as well as the staff. It negated the visual barrier between the school and the public, creating a clearer vehicular circulation. So, you know, again, when you're approaching the building, you could see where you were going. And it negated the visual barrier between the school and the public. And so it gave some of that implied observation that I was talking about that wasn't in the previous scheme. And I think it also gave us some flexibility to accommodate the bus stacking and the parking. And so we continued down this path and really thought that it offered a lot of things. I think lastly, the point that was really important to us was the safety standpoint, right? It opened up the whole north and western facade to the public. And so it was very visible of anyone approaching the building and anything that was happening on that front facade. From the aesthetic standpoint, we felt that obviously the approach to the building was much better. Obviously, when you come up to the site now, you can see that what you're coming up to, right? A legacy building, a building that's meant for education, obviously has the athletic component, but the emphasis is put on students and what's really the mission behind the project. So what I'm showing on the screen here is kind of a constructability benefits and challenges comparison. And so as you can see on the left is our scheme of reusing the site with the existing stadium where it is. And the one on the right is when we relocate that stadium. And you can see the checklist down below. Obviously, reusing the stadium, some of the pluses were that it stayed clear of the existing school, right? Something we knew that had to happen. It allowed for phased construction, which I think over the duration and time period that's going to take to build this building, it would be necessary to do that. And then it was a plus on the cost side, right? But to relocate the stadium, we thought there was a lot more pluses. First, it was free and clear of the existing school, so that was the same. But the material and delivery staging made construction much, much easier, as well as the building perimeter and hoisting that I talked about. Finally, I think the productivity and efficiency of the process was better. So the next little bullet point there is trade and subcontractor interest. Due to all the easing of those constraints in Scheme 2, it's going to offer a better bidding environment for those trades and subs that might want to participate in this project with your community. Next, we kind of took an overall assessment. What do these two schemes, how do they compare? And so a little bit of what I mentioned before, safety, obviously we felt it was a much safer campus, both during construction as well as post-construction and demolition of the existing high school, with the plan that we relocated the football field. Vehicular flow and circulation was much clearer and more advantageous in the second scheme. Pedestrian flow and circulation, again, kind of opening it up to that main intersection to the northwest, made things much clearer and easier to get to. Students on a day-to-day basis, again, much closer to the building. Community and urban connectivity. You know, this is a building in the heart of Gahanna, right? Obviously, a lot of growth, a lot of development around there, a lot of activity, and we felt that by having the school closer to that street facade, it really connected the neighborhood and town together. The outdoor plaza and green space, didn't mention this in the other one, but as you can see, when we reused that existing stadium location, it really hindered our ability to get any green space. You see a little bit of open space in between the academic wings on the east there, but any approach greenery is really minimized. And so again, when we relocate the stadium, that opened up a great opportunity to introduce some more green space in that parking lot to the west, et cetera. And then the aesthetics and optics. Again, we were putting the building first in that second scheme, and we felt that that was a much more appropriate term for a legacy building such as this high school. And then finally, similar to what we talked about before, constructability. It's just going to be an easier process for our friends at Risk Facility to happen. And so we met with the master facility team and the steering committee and really walked through the evolution of these ideas. And what rose to the top is kind of what we identified already. You know, it was best for safety, for the safety of our students, for your students. The urban flow was much more conducive of what Gahanna needed for a legacy building. And then another thing was just being good neighbors. And so kind of easing away from the neighbors to the east and not having a 2 or 3 story mass right next to them in their backyard was also a high point that was brought up. And so obviously with both these schemes, I think that what you might be asking yourself is, well, what happened to all the athletic fields on the site? So I just want to touch real briefly on the Blacklick Sports Complex Master Plan. This is kind of a visionary plan, but want to talk you through some of it. It has been submitted to the Jefferson Township for their review and sign off, and is with the Board of Trustees now. But you can see off to the north, we have 3 multi-purpose fields. Those would be natural grass, and lighted. Off to the northwest, where it says number 3 there are your softball fields. And our intent would be that those fields would be synthetic infields and natural grass outfields. And again, those would be lighted. They would have their restrooms and concessions there, both for the multi-purpose fields as well as the softball fields. We do have to provide some stormwater detention. So that little green box to the west there with number 9 on it is our retention field. And we offer some space for a future multi-purpose field. Now that isn't necessarily planned right now, but again, you have some clear open space for future development, whatever that may be. Number 5, you can see a field just south of that. That's your existing JV baseball field. And then number 4 is your existing varsity baseball field. And then the parking spaces all the way around. So we have quite a few spaces, obviously 381 up to the north where there's going to be a lot of activity, 162 down by the tennis courts that you see represented with that number 2 number. And then again, restrooms and storage for those tennis courts. And so that's it. So Steve, I'd feel free to chime in with anything else that you may.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul. Could you go back to the 2 designs juxtaposed to one another?
Sure.
And here's a concept I'd like you to explain to everyone on the passive observation and urban flow. And it's I thought it was an interesting concept, sort of new to me, certainly, that I'll just let you take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the example I think we talked about in our meeting was kind of your front door and back door. So I live in your average neighborhood, not a high crime neighborhood by any means. You know, pretty safe. But a couple of summers ago, we had some break-ins, and it was interesting that they used the same pattern. They all went through the back garage door or an opening that was kind of secluded and away from what could be seen, right? And so when we talk about the safety of a school, a couple of things come up. What can the most amount of eyes see? And so when we were looking at the scheme on the left and having the stadium in front, we really felt that it blocked you know, just your average public driving down Hamilton, and even at the corner, that northwest corner, from being able to see that front facade. So if you can imagine, after hours, having a good 70% of your front facade covered up by stadium and bleachers, and the problems that could potentially offer as far as break-ins or just, you know, activities that you don't want to happen, right? Whereas the scheme on the right opens all of that up to the public. And so what you have was you know, the multitude of eyes on that, and that implied observation just means exactly that there's going to be people with their eyes offering those safeties. If anything's going wrong or anything's seen, you know, the proper authorities can be notified much more easily, and perpetrators can be identified much more easily.
Thanks, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we can do is just really quickly, Mark Ogden, you talked a lot when we went over this design with the constructability piece, and the building on the right would require, and you touched on this as well, Paul, cranes, right? Then there's really not enough space in the Lincoln Elementary parking lot to constructability really means lots of difficulty in using cranes to get in and out of the site. Mark, do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So the image on the left, there's really just 2 points of entry, and it's to the north, to the southwest there. What we had conceived with this particular concept was actually the likelihood of 2 tower cranes in order to construct it, which is very expensive and has a lower productivity than what would likely be experienced on the right, which would be rolling crawler cranes, perhaps just a single one, maybe 2, but still higher degree of productivity, lower costs. Also, access around the perimeter is much more favorable with the scheme on the right.
Okay, thanks, Mark. And the lighting issue, Paul, you touched on, the natural light, which is so important to learning, much more of it coming on the right, right?
Correct. Again, I think, you know, what we're showing in the initial scheme was having those educational wings off to the east. And really that doesn't give you the best lighting to the day. You know, in an ideal world, all of your classrooms would face north, right? You get that nice soft lighting. And so we really tried to maximize that west and north light for those students. And by opening up the site and moving the football field, we were able to get those classrooms off to that west and north side. So offered some real advantages from that standpoint.
All right. Thanks so much. Jill, if we can go to our presentation, Paul, if you can stop sharing the screen, thank you. Just a few more things to talk about. I'm on mute, sorry. We have a lot of challenges in this moment, not just COVID-19, but as things began to shut down with construction, there was a lot of dormancy in the materials market. I already talked about steel, but other construction materials, wood. And so that's ramped back up, but there's a long queue for all kinds of construction materials. The labor market before COVID-19 pandemic hit was already very tight in construction. And, you know, it's really driving costs up, the shortage for labor. And then just the logistics, so supply chain logistics, steel's being built probably out of the country. And so just getting in the queue, getting it here, and that goes for all kinds of construction materials as well. And then we could encounter weather issues. So what we're trying to do is be very disciplined and plan for all these constraints that we're going to face. We could go to the next slide. But what we hope to be able to do is begin construction in the fall of 22 and finish the high school in the fall of 24. So I believe that means that this year's ninth graders would experience 1 year in the building. And I'm really hoping that we can do that. Again, we have lots of challenges to that, but we're going to be very disciplined and work toward that goal. Hello, I'm Steve Barrett, Superintendent in Schools. Thank you for taking the time to watch our Phase 2 update of our Master Facilities Plan. We've been working really hard to design additions for Blacklick and High Point in all 3 of our middle schools and the design of our high school. And what you saw tonight is an update of where we are. And so what we'd like you to do is use a tool called Thought Exchange to give your impressions of the plans and where we are. Remember, the high school site and the buildings that you saw on it are not necessarily how the design is going to end up. It's just showing you how the site will be used. And so please give us your impressions, give us your feedback, follow the directions for Thought Exchange. I think they're very simple, it's very intuitive, and we're counting on your feedback because it'll help us plan for the next 75 years. The future of our district is going to be reshaped by Phase 2 of our Master Facilities Plan, and we're so excited to get your feedback. Thanks very much.